Excellent. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Fork in the Road. My name is Rusty Gaylord. I am so happy to be here. This is a conversation about decisions and the kinds of decisions that shape your life. I'm really happy to have Russell Hamilton on as my guest this week, and we're going to be talking about some of the decisions in his life. My intent with this is to have people on to talk about the real things that they have to struggle with in life. Because for all of us, whenever we want something in our life, we're motivated to move forward and make a decision and go for it. But there's also a part of us that's hesitant. And it's that part of us that's hesitant that can get in the way and slow us down. I experienced this when I left my job at Apple to become a coach. Russell's going to share some of his experience with that. And my goal is every week to bring on somebody who has faced one of those kinds of decisions, those moments when you have to decide, am I going to do this or am I not going to do it? And what it takes to move forward is courage. Because you're moving forward in a direction that is different from what you've done in the past and stepping into a new direction. So that's what we're going to be talking about today with Russell. Super happy to bring him on. So let's welcome Russell Hamilton.
Hi, Rusty. Great to be here with you. We get the Rusty Russell Show.
Yeah, exactly. The Rusty and Russell Show. Hey, and I neglected to actually describe who you are and how we know each other. And so let me just take a moment and do that. So Russell and I have been friends for over 20 years. We met at the business school at Stanford 20 years ago. So Russell's background is before business school, he was an environmental engineer, cleaning up hazardous waste sites. And then after his MBA, he went into financial services. So for the past 20 years, he's been an executive in innovation and strategic partnerships at American Express, Visa, and Wells Fargo. He lives in San Francisco with his wife and 2 young boys, and he loves to do outdoorsy stuff, and he loves cars, and he's a pilot and a mountain biker, so he's got all sorts of fun hobbies on the side. So that's a little bit about Russell, but one of the things I think is interesting, and I want to maybe we can start with this, Russell, is just to dive right in, is to talk about your experience a few years ago when you were living here in the San Francisco area, and you had an offer to move to New York. And it was kind of an offer that could have been enticing. So tell us about that, and tell us about that experience of how you thought about it and how you made a decision whether to move or not to move.
Okay, thanks, Rusty, and thanks everyone for listening to a little slice of my life. I think Rusty's got some great perspective on all this, so it's neat to be able to, touch base and check in on these kind of things. So when I was at American Express, I was in New York. I've mostly been in the Bay Area, but I went out there to work for American Express, and then I came back to the Bay Area to work for Visa. And I was about halfway through my 9 years at Visa when I got a headhunter call from a terrific nonprofit that's called Business for Social Responsibility. And so they're a nonprofit that advises companies on how to be more environmentally responsible or socially responsible. You may have heard of the acronym ESG, environmental social governance. And so they're a consultant in that space. And they were looking for a head of their financial services practice. So that the kind of person that they wanted was somebody who had both environmental experience and also experience in financial services. And there aren't too many people out there like that. And I was one of them. And so I was really thrilled and intrigued to talk to them about it. I really liked working in New York. And as I got to know them, I really liked, what they stood for and all of the people that I met. I talked to their heads of all of their different geographies because this was a global practice. And it all sounded great, and I even got the job. So all of the things that you would want out of a potential dream kind of job. It was really marrying the a lot of the business work that I had done since my MBA to a lot of the environmental work I had done pre-MBA. The only catch was that since it was a nonprofit, it was lower salary, and we had just had our first kid, and so I'm dragging my family across the country to work for a job that pays less. There would be more travel because you're a global position, and so it was something that sounded great to me, but didn't seem to fit as well in the overall calculation of our family. And so after talking with my wife about it and thinking about it more, I ended up turning it down.
So the way you just described it, Russell, it sounds like that conclusion made a lot of sense, right? When you just like, we're moving across the country and I'm taking less money and I'm going to be traveling more. Like you highlighted all of those things. But the flip side of that was, I mean, I know you, right? We've known each other for years. Like you're passionate. You care a lot about the environment and you care about making a difference. And I know that you volunteer some of your time to do those kinds of work on a volunteer basis. So there must have been a pretty strong appeal to you of being a part of this organization and having a leadership role there to really expand your impact and bring together these two parts of your life. So that part must have felt really compelling.
Absolutely. It was a really tough decision, and my wife was really supportive about it. We could have moved, but in the end, it just didn't seem like it was. Any new job is still a risk. You don't know how it will go, and it just seemed like it was a little too much to bite off in one thing. And so I did just what you said. I've been doing volunteering on the side and doing a few environmental projects for local nonprofits that way since then.
Well, say a little bit more about that, because I think oftentimes when it comes to decisions, we think it's all or nothing. And for a job, either you take it or you don't. I get that, right? That is an all or nothing kind of decision. But what you just described was some of the positive attributes of this job that were exciting to you. You were able to bring into your life, even without moving across the country, bringing your family, all of that, all of the negatives, right? You were able to have some of the positives without the negatives. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about that experience and how you even came to that idea.
Well, sure. And I was thinking about it, and I was thinking, there's a number of ways to interact with nonprofits. One way is to be employed by one of them, but another way is to volunteer for them. And when you volunteer, in some senses, you get to have the juicy roles because they're not paying you, so they have to sort of compensate with the experience that you're getting. And so I was able to work for some nonprofits like Save the Redwoods and Save the Bay out here through our MBA program, which Stanford provides some opportunities to provide strategy consulting. So you're actually doing some of the same things that BSR does, where you're providing or actually in reverse, right? Instead of providing nonprofit expertise to corporations, you're providing business expertise to nonprofits. And so I was able to sort of flip it around and still be able to do some of the things that, I would have liked to have done in that job.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. I love that because just this idea of crafting your life in a way so that the pieces fit together in a way that works for you, right? Which is you've got work, you've got family, you've got your interests, hobbies, all of those things. Like, how do you blend those together in a way that works? Which maybe is a good segue into another decision that you've made in the last couple of years. So maybe you can share a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure. So one of the things that I like in your book, a little plug there.
Thank you for the advertisement.
Sure, which I read. I recommend it. Is there's the theme that you have of why wait for retirement to do the things that you want, and so things like this. You could, just as you did with your career. And some of the people you profiled in the books, you could be like, well, I'll just keep doing this corporate job until retirement, and then I'll do the things that I really like. And so some of these things that I like about being in the nonprofit sector, I don't have to hold off until I'm retired. I found a way, partially again with the family solution. I'm leaning on my wife's salary a little bit here, but I went down to more of a part-time independent consultant. I left Wells Fargo 2 years ago now, and now I am, doing a bit of nonprofit consulting, volunteering again, as well as for-profit consulting, and with a flexible schedule so that, especially in the past year, you can be more flexible with the family and the kids and things like that. So it's not something that any given person can make. You need to be able to pay the bills, as a family. But for us, it worked well to have somebody that was more flexible, and it let me do some of the things that I didn't have to put off until retirement that, are sort of warm and fuzzy.
So I'm curious about your perspective on this, because as a man, I know I feel some obligation to provide and to be, have the stable job. And it's so easy to say, yeah, that's all BS. That's a relic of the past. But there's still some expectation of it that I don't know where it comes from. It's internal, or it came from my family, or it comes from society. I don't know. But I'm curious if you feel or felt any of that and how you thought about it.
Yeah, I think if I had a sort of maybe a more, if I was more of a just a financial services person who really enjoyed the field, and that's everything that I wanted to do, I'd probably feel like why leave this, and why leave a perfectly good salary and perfectly good jobs, just like you had to do, or you decided to do. But I think that maybe it's something about like nonprofit and the societal goods that, it's not in the sort of the maximizing revenue type of category. So it made it, if I'm interested in that sort of thing and pursuing that sort of thing, it doesn't, I guess it doesn't make me think that about that financial side of stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know if that was too clear.
Yeah, no, I get that. But what about the giving up of so much of your life that you had invested in this career direction, right? I mean, it'd been 15, 18 years, whatever it was, since business school, that you've been working in financial services at big companies. You've been successful there, leading organizations, leading teams. Was there any, I know we get momentum, right? It's like we get momentum going in a certain direction, and you stepped out of that, right? You're still doing some consulting work, both pro bono and for profit, but just to step out of that whole pathway requires some courage. It requires, that takes some deliberate effort to do that. And I'm curious if that, like, how you worked through that.
It does. It isn't. It's not an easy step to do, for sure. But I think in this unusual past couple of years around the pandemic, maybe there's a little more support for, what is it, the big quit these days? It seems like there's more acceptance of leaving things than there used to be. And I do get to have a bit of the best of both worlds, where I'm still keeping current in the payments field and doing financial services through, paid consulting. And so I have that toe in the water, and then I can still do the nonprofit volunteering as well. And on that side, I'm also providing, I'm sort of drawing on my business background as well. So I get to feel like I still stay current and still sort of are using some of what I did on both sides.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned earlier this idea of forgetting about retirement, because, and I talk about this a lot, both in individual conversations and with groups of people, because we assume that we can't have what we want now, so we'll get it in retirement. That's this whole idea of retirement is, I get to live the life I really want once I'm retired.
Right.
And I'm curious, now that you're living more of the life that you want to live now, like, if you look back, what's your thought about this whole idea of retirement and waiting until doing what you want to do? Like, what's your perspective on that?
I'm totally with you, Rusty, and that you shouldn't put it off. I mean, like you were saying about how it is a risk to just walk away from a full-time job. I mean, I was surprised at the number of people that just reached out to me. Normally, if you're like, for the paid consulting side of things, you would think that you'd have to beat the bushes and do a lot of business development and a lot of meetings. But, if you've been working for a while, you've ended up knowing a number of people. And when I sort of let the word out that I was doing that, a number of people, very, very nice folks who I had always enjoyed working with, in my past roles, sort of reached out to me for various consulting things. And I got to work for big tech firms, and I'm doing some interesting projects right now. And I think if I was really worried about, I needed to have exactly as much salary as I had right before, to right after, I think it would have been harder to do it. But in retrospect, I think I could. If I wanted to be just a full-time independent consultant and have more flexibility with my time, I think I could do that.
I think that's brilliant. There's something so magical in that we expect it's going to be so hard. And you even said, like, if I had expected my salary to stay the same before and after, it would have been a way harder decision. And yet Now that you're on the other side of it, it's not as hard as you expected it to be.
Right.
Because people come to you, there's opportunities, and you continue to expand and broaden your network. I just love that takeaway because oftentimes, and I think this is true in so many respects, it's the anticipation of the decision that's way harder than actually once you've made the decision. It's not that hard to execute. It's expecting to make the decision that's harder than the execution of it afterwards. And I'm hearing some of that in what you're just describing.
Totally. You're thinking, can I really do this? And what's all involved? And I think part of what you have in your book about how you don't just quit as the first thing, you lay a lot of groundwork and you make sure you figure things out. I think that definitely helps.
Yes. Yeah. Step by step. Right. Exactly. I think that's true. So many of us expect to go from A to Z rather than going through sequentially through the alphabet. Yeah. Well, Russell, thank you so much for joining me today and talking about this. I just find it so insightful to learn about your journey and to hear people's experiences in making changes in life, right? Those changes you do make and those changes you don't make, right? Because you also described choosing not to move out to New York with your family. And these are the forks in the road that we all encounter. And part of it is those things that show up in your life, like this offer, this headhunter call that came in with this opportunity. But some of them are the forks in the road that you create in your life, like your decision to go off and create your own consulting business. And I just think that's so, it's important. It's an important thing to recognize that the fork in the road doesn't always happen for you. Sometimes you create it.
Totally. Well, it's been a lot of fun to be on your show, Rusty.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Russell. It was great chatting with you, and look forward to seeing you guys next time.
Excellent.
Bye.
Bye.